On November 18, 1978, more than 900 American men, women, and children died in a remote settlement deep within the Guyanese jungle. And for decades, the tragedy has been reduced down to a single phrase: drink the Kool-Aid. The phrase is so common that it has almost stripped away the reality of what happened in the event that actually created it. The Jonestown Massacre would become the largest loss of American civilian life in a non-natural disaster until September 11, 2001. And at the center of it all was one man, Jim Jones. If you want more stories that look past what happened into what made it possible, make sure you subscribe. I got more coming. Jim Jones was born in Indiana in 1931 during the Great Depression. His father, James Thurman Jones, was a disabled World War I veteran who became an alcoholic that struggled to work and was also associated with the Ku Klux Klan. Jones and his father clashed on the issue of race, leading to many, many years of not talking to one another, in the words of Jones, after his father refused to allow one of his black friends into the house. His mother, Lynetta Putnam, was extremely ambitious and outspoken, so much so that she reportedly believed she had given birth to a messiah. Childhood acquaintances described Jones as obsessed with religion and obsessed with death, and this could have been due to a variety of factors, such as his intensive study of men like Joseph Stalin, Karl Marx, Gandhi, and even Adolf Hitler. Or perhaps it could have been because of the alleged funerals that he would hold on his parents' property for small animals, and the incident where he stabbed a cat to death. Regardless of what it was, his obsession with religion from an early age is well documented, studying various denominations, primarily because he found making friends difficult. And so as a way to socialize, he would gather neighborhood kids and conduct mock church services, casting himself as the preacher. And as Jones entered adulthood, he started to believe that a political influence was just as important as a religious one. While most of Cold War America viewed communism as the enemy, Jones became fascinated with the idea of economic equality and socialistic ideas. He believed that religion could create social change and attract followers who otherwise wouldn't be interested in political movements. In the 1950s, Jones founded what would eventually become known as the People's Temple. At first, it did appear genuinely admirable. Unlike many churches of the era, the People's Temple openly welcomed black members. Jones supported racial integration, organized food drives, and helped struggling families. Many people joined because they genuinely believed that the church was making the community a better place. And the growth of the People's Temple brought Jones something he enjoyed more than community service: influence. As membership rose, Jones began performing faith healings during service. He claimed he could cure illnesses, reveal private information, and perform a multitude of miracles. Of course, many of these events were staged in an effort to deify him even further. Many members were pushed to hand over savings accounts, homes, vehicles, and other personal possessions. Their friends were in the church, jobs connected with the church. Their entire support system existed within the church, making leaving it near impossible, because their entire lives were intertwined with the church. But for those that had still been willing and wanting to leave, Jones had had methods developed to keep them as well. Former members described humiliation rituals, loyalty tests, and punishments designed to reinforce obedience. By the early 1970s, Jones's behavior had become increasingly more erratic, and his paranoia had intensified, making him think that enemies surrounded him. Anyone who questioned him was part of a larger conspiracy. At the same time, traditional Christianity was becoming less important inside of the People's Temple. Jones would openly criticize religion even while leading a temple. He attacked the Bible when it conflicted with his own authority. And he increasingly presented himself as a uniquely enlightened figure deserving of absolute devotion. As scrutiny continued to increase in the United States, Jones looked for a way to escape outside oversight, and that search eventually led him to Guyana, a small nation on the northern coast of South America. It was English-speaking, politically friendly towards socialist ideas, and far away from growing criticism in the United States. Jones promoted the move as an opportunity to build a perfect community, free from racism, capitalism, and a sanctuary from the media's scrutiny. Many of his followers sold what little they had left and followed him. Despite the aspirations, living in Jonestown was difficult. Food was limited, residents worked long hours in exhausting conditions, and armed guards monitored the settlement. Loudspeakers broadcast Jones's speeches throughout the day and often throughout the night. Many residents were exhausted, isolated, and completely dependent on the organization, and now leaving was far more complicated than it had ever been. Many of them reasonably felt as though they were trapped. Jones's paranoia only worsened after arriving in Guyana. He became obsessed with the idea that enemies would eventually come for the community. To prepare his followers, he held simulated events known as White Nights. These were emergency drills where residents were gathered and told hostile forces were closing in. During some White Nights, members were instructed to prepare for mass death. This was a belief Jones had developed in Jonestown, in which he called translation, where he and his followers would all die together and move to another planet to live blissfully. On at least one occasion, they were given liquid and told it contained poison. Only after were they informed that it had been a loyalty test. Each exercise reinforced the same message: trust Jim Jones completely. Meanwhile, concerns about Jonestown continue growing back in the United States after the stories from a few escaped members made it back, describing abuse, coercion, and people being prevented from leaving. Eventually, those concerns reached Congressman Leo Ryan, and Ryan had built a reputation for personally investigating allegations rather than relying solely on reports. A respectable quality, no doubt. However, in November of 1978, he traveled to Guyana with some journalists and concerned relatives. At first, Jones welcomed the delegation, and the visit appeared successful. Residents performed songs, smiled for visitors, and praised life in Jonestown. But then the notes started appearing. Several residents secretly approached members of the delegation and asked for help leaving. Ryan agreed to take those individuals back with him, while Jones viewed that as a direct threat. The next day, Ryan and the defectors traveled toward Port Katuma airstrip, and as the group prepared to depart, the ambush ensued by Jones's Red Brigade armed guards. Gunfire erupted, and even one of the supposed fleeing temple members, Larry Layton, drew a weapon and began firing on the other members of the party that had already boarded the small Cessna. Congressman Leo Ryan was killed, along with several journalists and even a member of the temple trying to leave, while others were wounded as attackers fired repeatedly at those in the airstrip. Ryan became the first sitting member of the United States Congress to be assassinated in the line of duty. Jones understood what would happen next. A congressman had been murdered. International attention was inevitable. Authorities would arrive, a possibility Jones knew was inevitable ever since the move to Guyana, so he ordered his men to prepare the punch and gathered the community in the central pavilion, and the recording of what happened next still exists to this day. It is commonly known as the death tape. In it, Jones argued that hostile forces would soon arrive and insisted that death was preferable to whatever future awaited them. Translation, as he once believed. In the recording, you can hear moments where residents question him, express concerns, and even some panic, but Jones pushed forward anyways. And more likely than not, in an effort to ensure that parents lost the will to live, babies and young children were brought forth first. After doing this, many of the adults appear to have gone willingly after years of conditioning, though many certainly did not. Many of the bodies were found with bullet holes, while others had clear evidence of forced cyanide injections. Survivors of the massacre later recount armed guards surrounding the area. The exact number of people who voluntarily participated will never be known, but what is known is that there was nearly 1,000 premature deaths over the next several hours, entire bloodlines coming to an end. When authorities eventually did arrive and enter Jonestown, the scene was unlike anything they had encountered before. Bodies covered the entire settlement. Men, women, and children lay where they had fallen. 909 people drank the Kool-Aid and died. Over 300 of them were children. Jim Jones was found nearby, and unlike most of his followers, he had not drank the Kool-Aid. He had suffered a seemingly self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The tragedy of Jonestown remains one of the deadliest cult-related events in modern history, and most Most of the people who followed Jim Jones joined under the pretense it was only a church. They joined a community that promised equality, purpose, and belonging, only to get wrapped up into a fatal cult. And unfortunately, by the time many saw it for what it was, they were isolated in a jungle on a different continent 1,000 miles away from home, under the control of a man with a god complex. On November 18, 1978, that belief claimed 918 lives if you include those shot in the ambush and the 4 temple members at the headquarters in Georgetown. And it all started with a boy who wanted to preach so people would finally listen to him.